Okay, more quadratic equations, except this time factoring them is crazy. But first and foremost, here are the answers to your 7.2 word problems that you did. Hopefully those didn't give you too much of a headache and you guys were able to work together to figure that out. Again, let me know which ones you have questions about and I will answer them. Oh, Thursday. Tomorrow. Yay! Okay, here's the first thing that we're going to factor. And you're like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, yes, I know. Right now it says that x minus 7 squared minus 13 times x minus 7 plus 36 equals to 0. This sounds like the worst. However, did you notice that this is x minus 7 squared and this is x minus 7 by itself? What if I said the letter z is going to be your best friend today? And instead of writing x minus 7, let's write the letter z. Let's replace it. So this was x minus 7 squared, which means it's going to become z squared. This was negative 13 x minus 7, so instead it's going to become negative 13 z. And then we have plus 36 is equal to 0. This is something that we can factor. What multiplies to give me z squared? Well, z does. And then what multiplies to give me 36 but adds to give me negative 13? That's negative 9 and negative 4. So you quickly realize that z is equal to 4 and 9. And you're like, yay, I'm done. That was easy. Well, sort of, almost. In the original problem, our variable was x. So that means we have to figure out, well, what is x? Well, we learned that z was equal to x minus 7, right? But we learned that z was 4 and that z was 9. So instead of writing z, let's write 4 is equal to x minus 7 and 9 is equal to x minus 7. If we solve this, we realize that x is actually 11 and 16. So the final answer for this is x is equal to 11 and 16. Not too bad, right? Pretty painless. This guy, also going to be pretty painless. The only thing you have to realize is this guy's to the 4th power, which means there are going to be 4 answers for x, okay? But with this, we can go ahead and completely start factoring, like it's not that bad. We know that x squared times x squared will get me that x to the 4th. And then what multiplies to give me 8 but adds to give me negative 9? Well, negative 8 and negative 1. So right here, I mean, we've just factored it. You guys can go ahead and set both of those equal to 0. X squared minus 8 equals to 0. X squared minus 1 is equal to 0. I'll go over here first. We add 8 to both sides. X squared is equal to 8. When I square root both sides, you end up with x is equal to plus or minus. I'm going to go ahead and simplify it. It's 2 square roots of 2. And then over here, we're going to add 1 to both sides. And x squared is equal to 1. And when you square root both sides, x is equal to plus or minus 1. So those are our 4 answers. X is equal to a negative 2 square roots of 2, a negative 1, a positive 1, and a positive 2 square roots of 2. It said to the 4th, so there shall be 4 answers. Okay, this one's a little confusing, but again, we're going to use that lovely letter Z to help us solve this mess right here. This radical is really what's throwing us off. We cannot factor with our variable being underneath the radical like that. That's not good. So this is what we're going to let z equal. Z is equal to the square root of 2x. Okay? So, I mean, clearly we're going to replace this square root of 2x with a z. But you're probably like, well, what do I do with a thing that is not square root of 2x? It's just 2x. Well, I want you to think for a second. What if I squared both of these? I would end up with a z squared, and the square root of 2x squared, those squared things canceled, the square root and the squared canceled, just to give you 2x. So that means I'm replacing my 2x with a z squared. And this is something I can totally factor. So we have z equals 0. What multiplies to give you negative 15, but adds to give you 2, a positive 5, and a negative 3. So we learn very quickly that z is equal to a 3 and a negative 5. Well, going back to our original equation, we learned that z is equal to the square root of 2x. And so what we have to do is solve for x. We know that z is 3, and we know that z is negative 5. So this first one, we're going to square both sides, and we end up with 9 is equal to 2x. And when you divide both sides by 2, you get that x is equal to 9 over 2. Now this guy over here, I'm sure you're like, let's square both sides. And I would be like, yeah, sure. However, you have to think really quickly. The square root. Can the square root of 16 ever equal negative 4? No. The square root of 16 is always a positive 4. So can this square root equal a negative number? The answer is no. So this guy is no solution, and our only answer is x is equal to 9 over 2. That one was an evil trick. I'm sorry. But be careful with this negative square root business. It's going to get you. Last but certainly not least is this crazy cat right here, where we have 6 over u minus 17 over u squared is equal to negative 1/5. And you're like, OMG. And I'm like, I know. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this lovely u again, or z again. Z. And he's going to be equal to, this radical is on the bottom. So I'm going to have him equal to 1 over the square root of u. So what that means is this piece right here gets to become just z. So instead of 17 all over the square root of u, we have 17z, well, negative 17. So then I'm sure you're like, well, what do I do with this u? They're like, this doesn't make sense. Well, again, if I was to square both sides, you would end up with z squared is equal to 1 squared is 1, and the square root of u squared is just u. So this 6 over u is going to become 6z squared. I can then add 5 to both sides, so I have 6z squared minus 17z plus 5 is equal to 0. Let us make a big x. 6 times 5 is 30. Negative 17 goes in the middle. So what multiplies to give me 30 and adds to give me negative 17? Negative 15 and negative 2. So I'm just going to review how to factor by grouping. So 6z squared. The negative 17z becomes negative 15z and negative 2z. And we still have this plus 5 equals 0. I'm going to group the first and last two together. Who gets to come out of the 6 and the negative 15? Well, a 3 does, and a z gets to come out too. So we still have 2z minus 5. And in the second one, we need a negative 1 to come out so that we also have a 2z minus 5. So we have 2z minus 5 for our first factor, and the other factor is 3z minus 1. So if I simplify this, I get z is equal to 5 over 2 and 1/3. So I'm like, yay, I'm done. Oh yeah, just kidding. My original variable is u. So what we need to do is figure out what u is. Okay, I didn't have any more room. So we just solved for z, and this is what we got. And we know we let z equal 1 over the square root of u, and 1 over the square root of u. So z is 1/3 is equal to 1 all over the square root of u. And we know that 5/2 is equal to 1 all over the square root of u. This is actually a proportion, so you can cross multiply this guy. So 3 times 1 is 3. 1 times the square root of u is the square root of u. I can square both sides, and I get 9 is equal to u. There's one of them. Again, with this guy over here, you can cross multiply. 2 times 1 is 2 is equal to 5 square roots of u. If you want to go ahead, you can square both sides. Square, and you get that 4 is equal to 25u. Divide both sides by 25, and you get 4/25 is equal to u. So your final answer, u is equal to 4/25 and 9. I'm really glad I'm going to be in class tomorrow so I can help you guys figure out what to let z equal, because that's always the hardest part. I'll see you guys tomorrow. I'm excited.